What would you do if your own family forced your injured child to walk for miles in pain and then called you the emotional one for being upset? I'm Stephanie. I'm 31, a single mom, a high school English teacher, and the proud mother of Grace, my 12-year-old daughter. She's my whole world, bright-eyed, kind-hearted, and wise beyond her years. She's the kind of kid who thanks the cafeteria staff who volunteers to help carry books for the new student who makes your heart swell just by being in the room. So when I left her for a weekend conference, something I rarely do, I did it with a knot in my stomach. Not because Grace couldn't handle herself, she's more mature than most adults I know, but because of who I was leaving her with, my parents, Harold and Martha, and my younger brother, Jason. And before you assume this is a story about some toxic in-laws or a custody battle, let me tell you right now it's not. This is a story about family. The kind you're born into, the kind you keep giving chances to, and the kind that sometimes hurts you the most. Let me back up. 5 years ago, I got divorced from Grace's father, Mark. His job took him across the country, and while he sends child support on time and does the occasional FaceTime birthday call, it's really just been me and Grace. And we've made it work. I've juggled jobs, parent-teacher conferences, scraped through a few rice and beans weeks, but I've never let her feel unloved. Never once. My parents, though, they've always made me feel like not enough. Growing up, Harold was a renowned surgeon, stoic, commanding, brilliant, and cold. Martha was a former principal who could correct your grammar mid-cry. They held me to a brutal standard. An A wasn't impressive unless it was also the highest in the class. A compliment came wrapped in critique, and any time I faltered, Jason was there to absorb their pride. Jason, the golden boy. 3 years younger than me, a mirror image of our dad. He became an orthopedic surgeon like Harold married his med school sweetheart Megan and basked in their endless approval. Meanwhile, I, an educator with a master's degree, was treated like I'd settled for mediocrity. But here's the thing, I didn't stay in contact with them for me. I stayed because Grace adored them, and I wanted her to have what I didn't, a real loving connection with grandparents. She loved the lake house where they lived, this beautiful old cabin on a forested bluff 2 hours outside the city. She and Grandpa Harold would fish off the dock. Grandma Martha would bake lemon bars with her. And Jason, he'd visit occasionally, full of over-the-top stories and extravagant gifts. So when my principal nominated me to represent our school at an education conference in Chicago, something that could boost me toward the department head role, I hesitated. Not about the opportunity, but about where Grace would stay that weekend. "I'll be fine," Mom Grace said, stuffing her favorite books into her weekend bag. "It's only 3 days." She was right. We'd done overnights before, and they'd never given me a reason, at least not recently, to think they couldn't handle it. Still, something felt off this time. Maybe it was that Jason had just moved back in, temporarily. He and Megan were taking space, and he'd decided to crash at the lake house to recenter. Whenever Jason was around, the air felt different, more performative, more judgmental. My parents became sharper, more critical of me, more dismissive. It was like being 16 again, invisible in my own skin. We arrived on Friday afternoon. The lake house was picture perfect. Early spring buds framed the A-frame roof. Sunlight danced on the water. But as always, the beauty stopped at the door. "That jacket isn't nearly warm enough for the forecast," my mother scolded as she whisked Grace inside. "I've laid out more appropriate clothes for the weekend." Grace just gave me a small smile. The kind of look that said, "I've got this, Mom." I packed her hiking boots, I told my dad, as he launched into a speech about the weekend trail plans. "The ones you got her last Christmas." "Oh, right," he replied, already turning back to Grace. "Jason's bringing steaks. He'll be here by noon." Of course, Jason was the real event. Before I left, I pulled my mother aside in the kitchen. "Mom, Grace sometimes gets homesick. If she needs to call me even late, please let her." Martha waved it off. "Stephanie, we've raised children before. Successfully, I might add." My throat tightened. "She's also been having some knee pain from soccer. There's ibuprofen in her. Harold was a surgeon for 35 years. Jason's a doctor. I think we can handle a little knee pain." Dismissed. again. When Jason finally arrived, he gave me a nod and then swept Grace into a dramatic bear hug. There's my favorite niece ready for an adventure weekend with the cool uncle. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Jason had always been good with Grace. Too good, like he was constantly auditioning for the role of better parent. "Drive safe, Steph," he said already, walking away. "Be good, sweetie," I whispered to Grace, holding her tight. "Call me before bed, okay? I love you more than anything." "Love you too, Mom," she whispered back. "Don't worry so much. Your conference is going to be amazing." As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Grace stood between my parents and Jason, her face beaming with trust. That image, her smile, their indifference. Jason's smirk would haunt me for a long, long time. Saturday morning started like any other at the lake house. Grace woke up to the smell of donuts Jason had brought, full of that soft, sleepy happiness only kids have. She texted me a picture powdered sugar on her nose, holding a maple bar bigger than her hand. That was the last message I'd get from her for the next 36 hours. At breakfast, Grace, sweet, cautious, and always trying to keep the peace, mentioned the shorter trail. "Maybe we could do the 3-mile one," she asked. "Mom and I usually take that one when we hike, but of course that wasn't acceptable." "Your mother coddles you," Harold had said, his tone sharp. "You're old enough for a real hike," Jason chimed in, excited. "We're doing the full loop today, kiddo. You'll love the upper falls." So just like that, her voice was drowned out. The hike was over 7 miles round, trip up steep forest paths and slick terrain. Grace was wearing the hiking boots, I packed jeans and layers, thank God. Her backpack held trail mix, a water bottle, her inhaler, and her phone. But before they left, my mother confiscated it. "No electronics in nature," she'd declared. "This is family time." It wasn't a suggestion. They started out around 9 a.m. The forest was stunning in early spring sunlight, glinting through wet leaves, snowmelt rushing down the creek. Grace said the waterfall looked like something from a storybook, huge thunderous mist curling off mossy rocks. But things turned fast on the way back. About a mile past the falls, the trail narrowed along a stream. The rocks were slick from the spray, and Jason and my dad were ahead, walking fast. Martha trailed close behind. No one was watching Grace. She slipped. She remembers the sound more than the pain, a crack like a thick tree branch snapping. Her leg twisted under her and she went down, hard, screaming. They came rushing back. Jason dropped to his knees, checking her leg. "Tibia," he muttered. "Probably a fracture. Looks like it swelled up fast." Grace's breath was coming in gasps. "It broke. I heard it snap. Please, please call my mom." My dad glanced at his watch. "We've got dinner with the Hendersons at 7, he told Martha. "Can't we cancel?" Grace sobbed. "Absolutely not," Martha said, lips pinched. "We've had that dinner planned for months." Jason shrugged. "It might just be a hairline fracture. Let's get her back and reassess. No need to panic." "But I can't walk," Grace whimpered, and that's when they made their decision. Harold snapped a branch to use as a makeshift walking stick. Jason, a licensed orthopedic surgeon, insisted that walking it off would be fine, even beneficial. No one called 911. No one carried her. No one offered a piggyback ride. They forced my 12-year-old daughter to walk 3 miles on a broken leg. According to Grace, the pain was like fire. Every step made her vision blur. She cried at first, begged to stop. They let her rest for 30 seconds, then urged her forward. "There's soup waiting," Martha said, like it was encouragement. They were worried about missing dinner, not her injury, not her pain, just the precious Hendersons. By the time they reached the house, her leg was unrecognizable, swollen, purple, bent wrong. Only then did Jason and Harold help her the last stretch, half carrying her across the yard. And what was their treatment? Ice. 2 ibuprofen. Elevate the leg. And then they left. My mother brought her crackers, fluffed a pillow, and said, "There's water and the TV remote. We'll only be gone a few hours." They went to dinner. My baby girl, in unbearable pain, was left completely alone in a remote house 2 miles from the nearest neighbor, with no cell phone, no working landline, no way to call for help. The landline, I later found out, had been knocked out days earlier. A fallen tree. I forgot to mention kind of detail. That night, while Grace lay in agony, I was in Chicago, pacing my hotel room, calling over and over. I tried my parents' phones, Jason's, even the landline. No answer. No one had called me. Not once. Not after the fall. Not during the hike. Not while she cried. They told me later I was being paranoid, insecure, emotional. What they didn't say, that my daughter was lying in bed alone with a shattered leg, shaking in pain, hoping someone would come back soon. By Sunday morning, I couldn't take it anymore. The conference was still going, but I told the organizers I had a family emergency. I packed, checked out, and got in my car. It was a 3-hour drive. I don't remember much of it. Just white knuckles on the steering wheel and my gut twisting with dread. When I pulled up to the house around noon, all 3 cars were in the driveway. Mine crunched into the gravel beside them. Still no one came out. I walked in. And there they were. Harold, Martha, and Jason at the coffee table playing Scrabble. Pastries, coffee, laughter. Like nothing had happened. Stephanie, my mother, said when she saw me as if I were a neighbor who'd shown up uninvited. We weren't expecting you until tonight. I stood there frozen. My eyes scanned the calm, cheery room, my father sipping coffee, Jason flipping Scrabble tiles, and I felt my skin flush with rage. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days, I said. Where is Grace? Jason, cool as ever, said, she's fine, just taking it easy after a little tumble on the trail yesterday. Tumble. I didn't wait for another word. I pushed past them toward the guest room. The sight that met me stopped me cold. Grace was lying in bed, pale and sweating. Her leg was propped on pillows, grotesquely swollen twice its normal size. Deep purple bruises stretched from her ankle to her thigh. Her lips were chapped, and her eyes rimmed red. When she saw me, fresh tears welled instantly. "Mom," she whispered, "you came." I rushed to her side, heart pounding. "Sweetheart, what happened?" "What did they do?" She tried to sit up. I gently held her hand. Her fingers trembled as she recounted it all, how she slipped, how she screamed, how Jason said it wasn't serious, how they forced her to walk, how they left her alone. I could barely breathe. I touched her leg and felt the unnatural angle, the heat radiating off it. This wasn't a bruise. This wasn't a sprain. This was severe. I turned slowly to the doorway where all 3 of them now stood, watching me defensively quiet. "You made her walk. On this." "We gave her pain meds," Martha said weakly. 2 ibuprofen, Grace mumbled. Jason said it was probably nothing. My father crossed his arms. "Kids exaggerate." "She heard it break," I shouted. "She begged you to call me, and you left her alone." Jason had the nerve to shrug. "It looked minor. I've seen worse. Kids are resilient. She needs a hospital," I said, voice flat. "Now." "You're being dramatic," my father cut in. "If you'd let me re-examine her," I snapped. "You've done enough." I scooped Grace into my arms. She winced but clung to me. I carried her out, ignoring the flood of excuses behind me. "Should we come with you?" Martha asked, suddenly helpful. "No," I said, not looking back. "You've done enough." The drive to the hospital was agony. Grace whimpered with every bump in the road. I called ahead. They were ready for us. As soon as we arrived, the ER team took one look and rushed us to a room. Dr. Rivera, a calm, warm-faced pediatric doctor, ordered X-rays immediately. Grace was finally given real pain relief. When Dr. Rivera returned with the scans, her expression was grim. "She has a displaced tibial shaft fracture," she said. "The bones completely snapped and shifted out of alignment." I sat down hard. "She needs emergency surgery to avoid long-term damage. Walking on it has caused additional soft tissue trauma. We're worried about compartment syndrome swelling inside the muscle that can cut off circulation and cause nerve damage." I stared at the X-ray. Bone fragments askew like shattered glass. My hands shook. "If she'd been treated immediately," I asked. "She may have only needed a cast," Dr. Rivera said gently, "but the delay changed everything. The orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Layton, was called in. He confirmed Grace would need screws and a titanium rod to stabilize the bone." Grace looked at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Will it hurt? You'll be asleep," Dr. Layton assured her, "and we'll manage your pain. With proper care and therapy, you'll heal. When they wheeled her off for surgery, I followed the gurney until they turned the corner. Then I turned around and saw them, my parents, Jason, in the hallway. They had come. My father stepped forward. "You're overreacting. Surgery?" "Really?" my mother added. "She was walking fine yesterday. She was forced to walk," I said, barely keeping my voice down. "She was in agony. She told you it hurt. She told you something snapped." "Kids say that all the time," Jason said with a shrug. "Most of them are just scared, not actually injured. You're an orthopedic surgeon." My voice cracked. "You should have known better. In a hospital." "Sure, not on a trail," he replied. "You can't expect a full exam out there. You should have erred on the side of caution," I snapped. "You could have carried her out, called an ambulance, anything other than making her walk." "We had dinner plans," my mother said quietly. I just stared. "You left my daughter injured alone in a house with no phone because of dinner plans." "She was resting," my father replied, as if that justified it. "You're being emotional." I closed my eyes. Flashes came back, my own childhood injuries ignored. Jason always believed me, always doubted. Grace had suffered because of them. Stephanie, Jason said, trying to sound calm. "This is why Mark left. You blow everything out of proportion. That did it. Grace is having emergency surgery because you, a trained surgeon, decided your dinner party was more important than a child's pain." I stepped forward, ice in my veins. "I want you all to leave. Now." My father's face turned red. "If we walk out that door, don't expect us to come back." I met his eyes, steel in mine. "I don't," and I meant it. The waiting room was sterile, too quiet. I sat alone, the air thick with antiseptic and dread. 2 hours. That's how long they said the surgery would take. But every second felt like another mile I had to walk away from the fantasy that my family had ever been safe. I didn't check my phone. I couldn't. I didn't want to see more text messages from Martha apologizing if things got out of hand, or from Jason telling me to chill out and not make this a legal thing. But it was already a legal thing. It was medical neglect. They hadn't just made a mistake. They deliberately ignored a 12-year-old child's cries for help and left her alone in that pain. Dr. Layton came out at nearly the 3-hour mark. His face was tired, but calm. "She's in recovery," he said. "The surgery went well. We stabilized the fracture with a titanium rod and 3 screws. There was soft tissue damage, quite a bit, but we were able to address it." I exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. "She's going to be okay," he added, "but she'll need rest and follow-up physical therapy. She's non-weight-bearing for at least 6 weeks." When I walked into the recovery room and saw her, my Grace drowsy pale but breathing steadily, I nearly collapsed. "Mom," she whispered groggily. "I'm here," I said, brushing a strand of hair off her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked around, eyes scanning for familiar faces. "Where are they?" My throat tightened. They had to go, honey. Grace blinked slowly, tears forming. They didn't believe me. I told them how bad it hurt. Uncle Jason said I was being dramatic. I leaned in close. "I believe you, Grace. I always will. And I'm so sorry I wasn't there sooner." She nodded weakly and fell back asleep, holding my hand. That night, while she slept and the machines beeped softly, I made a promise to her to myself. This would never happen again. The following day, I contacted a family law attorney, Patricia Reyes, who specialized in child protection cases. After reviewing Grace's medical records and hearing everything that had happened, she didn't mince words. "What your parents and brother did constitutes medical neglect," she said. "You have every right to cut off contact, and if needed, we can pursue a restraining order." I didn't know yet if I wanted to take it that far, but I did know I needed boundaries, clear, enforceable ones. I saved every message. I highlighted every part of Grace's surgical report that mentioned delayed treatment, tissue damage risk of complications. I printed the x-rays. Patricia helped me draft 2 letters, one to my parents, one to Jason. They weren't emotional rants. They were factual, legal, deliberate. To Harold and Martha, I trusted you with my daughter. You failed her. She suffered a displaced fracture. You made her walk. You left her alone without a phone, without care, and dismissed her pain. Effective immediately, you are not to contact Grace in any form. Any attempt to bypass this will result in legal action. This is not temporary. This is not negotiable. To Jason. As a medical professional, your actions were particularly inexcusable. You ignored clear signs of a fracture and delayed treatment causing avoidable harm. You are not to contact Grace. Your medical license does not excuse your failure as a caregiver or uncle. I mailed both letters certified. Then I changed our phone numbers and emails. Only close friends' school contacts and Mark Grace's father got the new ones. Grace watched me drop the envelopes in the mailbox. She was on crutches, her cast still fresh and wrapped in protective foam. "Is this forever?" she asked. I looked at her. My beautiful, brave girl. The one who shouldn't have to ask that. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but for now it's what we need." They didn't take it well. My mother left voicemails at my school. Tearful, rambling, accusing. Jason somehow found my new email and sent a scathing message accusing me of weaponizing the situation and trying to ruin his career. My father's lawyer reached out to Patricia with vague threats about mental instability and parental alienation. None acknowledged what they'd done. Not one apology, not one admission of harm, just blame, deflection, control. But Grace's silence toward them said more than I ever could. When a get well soon card arrived from my parents with a smiley sticker and no mention of the incident, Grace looked at it for a long moment. Then she handed it to me. "Can you throw this away?" As the days passed, the true healing began. It wasn't just Grace's leg, it was her trust in the world, her sense of safety, her understanding of love, and it was mine too. I stopped second-guessing myself. I stopped apologizing for being too sensitive. I stopped expecting the family who broke me to help me rebuild. Our real family, the one we chose, rallied around us. My friend Melissa organized meals. My colleague Tom helped carry groceries. Even Mark stepped up calling Grace more, sending supplies, offering support. And my Aunt Eleanor. She was the first one who didn't say, "Oh no, they didn't mean it like that." Instead, she said, "What can I do?" Grace came home from the hospital 3 days after surgery. Our apartment had always felt warm, lived-in, familiar. But now standing at the bottom of the third-floor walk-up, it suddenly felt like a mountain. Grace looked up at the stairs, her arms tight around her crutches. "This is going to be interesting." I laughed through the exhaustion. That's one word for it. It took 20 minutes and every ounce of her strength. But she made it. One hop at a time with me behind her and our neighbor Tom holding her school backpack. It was humbling. It was hard. But we were finally home. That first night back, I helped her bathe, change, and settle into bed with her favorite books, her weighted blanket, and the pink lamp we'd picked out together last year. Everything safe, everything familiar. As I tucked her in, she asked the question I'd been dreading. Are we ever going to see Grandma and Grandpa again? Or Uncle Jason? I sat at the edge of her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "I don't know, sweetheart. What they did, making you walk on a broken leg, leaving you alone when you were hurt, that wasn't okay. It wasn't safe." Grace nodded, eyes fixed on her comforter. I kept thinking, you would have believed me. You would have taken me to the doctor right away. My heart cracked. "I would have," I said softly. "Always. I will always believe you, always take care of you, always fight for you." She was quiet for a moment. Then Grandpa said I was being dramatic, like you. I swallowed hard. That word dramatic had followed me my entire life. Is that bad being like you? I blinked back tears. No, Grace. That's the greatest compliment I've ever gotten. I reached for her hand. You're brave. You're honest. You speak up when something's wrong. That's what being like me means, and I'm proud of you for that. She squeezed my fingers, then leaned back into her pillows. That night, I cried in the kitchen. tears of rage relief and the kind of pain that only comes when you realize you've been pretending your family loved you the way you deserved. And they never really did. The days blurred together. Physical therapy appointments, insurance calls, medical bills that made my head spin. Mark stepped up more than I expected. He had groceries delivered weekly. He FaceTimed Grace every other night. And when I told him finally everything that happened, even he, the man who once thought I overreacted about my parents, fell silent. "I had no idea," he said. "I'm so sorry. I thought you were exaggerating, but..." This. He paused. "Do you want me to fly out? Help out for a few days?" I blinked. Mark hadn't offered help like that since our divorce. "No," I said. "We're okay, but thank you. Maybe just keep calling Grace. She needs that right now." "Of course," he said. "Anything she needs." And then after a pause, "What are you going to do about your parents?" It was the question that never stopped spinning in the back of my mind. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love you to protect your child become the ones you need protecting from? That week, I found a support group online, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. I spent 2 hours reading posts from strangers who felt like soulmates. Same patterns, same excuses, same ache. I also met with Patricia again to understand my rights. She reviewed Grace's records, our letters, and all the voicemails I'd saved from my family. "They may never admit wrongdoing," she said, "but what matters is that you know the truth, and you're allowed to act on it." I nodded. That night, as Grace rested after a particularly painful therapy session, I sat at the kitchen table and started writing a letter, not to send, but for me. I titled it, "What I Wish They'd Said." We're sorry. We failed her. We failed you. We will never make excuses for what we did. We don't deserve contact, but we hope one day to earn your forgiveness. Of course, none of that would ever come. But writing it helped me see what I truly needed. Peace, not closure, not an apology, not reconciliation, just peace. My Aunt Eleanor became a lifeline. She called weekly, visited when she could. She brought Grace books and crossword puzzles and soft homemade cookies that didn't taste like guilt. One night, while Grace was asleep, we sat in the living room drinking tea. "You know," Eleanor said gently, "your father once told me I was too emotional when I cried at my own mother's funeral, that I should hold it together like a man." He was 13. I blinked. He learned to dismiss pain before he learned to drive, and he passed it down to Jason and tried to pass it to you, but I didn't take it, I whispered. She smiled. "No, you broke the pattern." The weeks passed. Grace's leg healed. Her spirit, that was slower. She started having nightmares about the trail, the pain, the silence when she called out and no one came. She became anxious when I left the room too long, startled at sudden noises. But we worked through it, slowly, gently together. Then one day, another envelope came in the mail, another card from my parents. It said, "Thinking of you. Hope to see you soon. Love Grandma and Grandpa." Grace looked at it, then at me. "They still don't get it, do they?" "No," I said. "They don't." She held it for a long moment. "Can I throw it away?" "You never need permission for that," I replied. She smiled softly and did just that. 6 months after Grace's surgery, she ran back onto the soccer field, confident healed, laughing with her teammates. She wore a soft blue brace over her shin, her scar a thin pale line across her lower leg, barely visible now. But I saw it every time she kicked the ball, not as a wound, but as a reminder of what she'd survived, a reminder of what we'd overcome, a reminder that sometimes healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering, then choosing to grow anyway. Grace's strength amazed me daily, but her emotional scars were trickier. She still flinched at the smell of pine, still grew quiet when she overheard people laughing too hard at a private joke, still hesitated when someone told her she was too sensitive, because that phrase, "too sensitive," was how our pain had always been dismissed. But we had tools now. a therapist who taught her to name her emotions and taught me to hold space without rushing to fix. We journaled, we colored, we walked our neighbor's dog on cool afternoons, and Grace would quietly say things like, "You know, I don't really miss them anymore." Is that terrible? No, I'd say. That's truthful. Sometimes she'd add, "I think I miss who I wanted them to be." And I'd nod. Me too. The cards kept coming. Birthday cards, holiday cards, just thinking of you notes, all signed Love Grandma and Grandpa. Never once acknowledging the broken leg, never once apologizing, never once accepting what they'd done. One day, my mother cornered Grace's soccer coach at a weekend game, tried to give her a gift bag for Grace. Our coach knew the story. She didn't accept it. That night, Grace asked me, "Why won't they say sorry I thought about it?" Because some people would rather rewrite the story than face the truth of what they did. It's easier to pretend you're the victim than to admit you caused pain. She was quiet for a long time. "That must be really lonely," she said. I stared at her, stunned by the empathy in her voice. After everything, she still found compassion. That was when I realized she was okay. She was better than okay. She had turned pain into wisdom. As for Jason, he never apologized either. Last I heard from Aunt Eleanor, he was telling anyone who'd listen that I'd lost it and cut everyone off for no reason. He said I was unstable, dramatic, vindictive. But Eleanor shut that down quickly by quietly sharing the medical records, the legal letters, and the photos of Grace's swollen black and blue leg. She didn't need to yell. She just let the truth speak for itself. And you know what? I no longer cared what they said behind my back, because we were living in peace and they were living in denial. Our traditions changed. Our apartment, once small, became a sanctuary. We hosted friend holidays, Friday night movie marathons, Sunday pancakes with too much syrup. We weren't missing anything. We were replacing it with something better. Love without conditions, support without manipulation, family without cruelty. My ex Mark even surprised me. Not with a reconciliation we'd both outgrown each other romantically, but as a parent. He became more involved, flew in for Grace's second surgery to remove the hardware, and even helped install grab bars in our shower. Real, steady help. I didn't realize how absent I'd been, he admitted one evening. Watching what your parents did to Grace, I never want her to feel like I didn't fight for her. I believed him, because now we both were. And Grace. She didn't just bounce back, she leveled up. She spoke up when a teacher dismissed a classmate's anxiety. She helped a friend report an unsafe situation at school. She said no without apologizing. She cried when she needed to, and laughed hard when she wanted to. And one day, while we were walking home after a dentist appointment, she turned to me and said, "You know what? I learned what? When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." I stopped in my tracks. "Maya Angelou," I whispered. She smiled. "I know, but it's still true." That's the thing about betrayal, it doesn't always look like a knife in your back. Sometimes it's the people who raise you, who teach you to doubt yourself, who smile while they silence you, who say you're too emotional instead of asking what hurt. But the truth, Grace didn't need them to heal, and neither did I. Some things deserve to stay broken, because not everything can or should be glued back together, especially not at the expense of your peace, your safety, or your child's well-being. We didn't lose a family, we left a pattern, and in its place we built something stronger, something real, something full of light. Have you ever had to walk away from family to protect your peace or someone you love? Drop your story in the comments. Let someone else know they're not alone. And if this story touched you, please like, share, subscribe. Because sometimes walking away is the bravest thing you can do. Thank you for listening. You.